I was 21 years old when it happened, and I don't remember much about that time. To my surprise, though, I can remember every single detail. It's funny because my memory is famously bad. What did I do yesterday? I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night. But this memory, this one event, I feel like a greater power etched it into my soul and kept it there so clearly that I can't forget it. It seems like yesterday. The vividness of these memories is what makes the stories I tell seem so real. My dad has been a salesman all his life and won a prize. Scooters were his prize. Of course, we rode them a lot, especially on the weekends. It was on one of these rides on the weekends that I hit a tree. The blow to my right hand tore the muscles, and surgery was the only way to fix it. At age 21, I knew nothing about surgery or hospitals. I had never been under anesthesia before, had never had surgery or been in the hospital for a long time. However, something went wrong when they gave the sedative that day. My heart stopped. It was clear that I was dead for 7 minutes. There were 7 minutes that changed everything. That was in 1987, a time when people barely talked about near-death experiences, NDEs. I had no idea what had happened. We all have a spirit guide, which may sound like something out of this world until you meet yours. Of course I did during those 7 minutes. Anion was his name. It was like nothing was strange when he said, "I'm your spirit guide." He led me to worlds I had never dreamed and through places that can't be described in words. He took me through different worlds and scenes and then asked me to tell him what I had seen. 7 minutes seemed like a very long time. To help you understand what's going on, let's start with what a normal near-death experience is like. People who have had NDEs often say that they are dying during surgery or a terrible accident, and then all of a sudden they are flying above their bodies. They can see everything going on below them, including the doctors and the scene of the accident. Then they are pulled toward a tube with a light at the end of it. A bright, shining light. As they move toward it, they hear a voice sometimes. You don't have time. It can be a family member, an old friend, a grandparent, or even someone they didn't know very well. Return. You're still not done. It's like God stopped them in the future and brought them back to the world they just left. That's pretty much what happened to me, though. It wasn't just the tube and the light that I saw. No, I was taken straight to the other side, past the light, to a place that words can't describe. Wow! I was no longer in the hospital all of a sudden. Even though my heart had stopped, my mind was still beating and flying. What did I see first? The building was bigger and more beautiful than anything else I had ever seen on Earth. As far as I could see, there was nothing but shining white marble. It must have been kilometers long. Huge white towers stood about 6 feet apart and were probably 20 or 30 feet high. Each of these long marble tables had a bench on either side across from it. 2 people sat at each table. It was beautiful, out of this world, but strangely familiar. A beautiful set of tunnels opened up in front of me to my left. It looked like solid marble arches were used to make these caves. They were cut at sharp right angles, making them look like gates carved out of darkness. The marble was black, and the tube seemed to go on forever, disappearing into the distance, leaving no trace. The hall was clearly laid out, a tunnel, a table, and a column. The room had an old, deliberate rhythm to it. Alan, my spirit guide, stood next to me and told me what was going on. His voice was soft but steady, and it echoed in my left ear. He told me this was the center for orientation. I learned that souls are brought right here to this center of direction as soon as they cross the white light at the end of a tunnel. The tables with 2 people sitting at each one were staffed by orientation guides. There are these experts because most of us forget who we are when we die and go to the afterlife. When we come down to Earth, it's like a veil is pulled over our thoughts. We don't remember where we came from or why we're here. Our goal is to learn more about the universe and explore it. The Orientation Center, on the other hand, helps us remember the truth. Look up to the next tunnel. Alan's voice told me as I came to this realization. I did. An old man, maybe in his late 80s or early 90s, came out of the tube. He was holding his left chest with his right hand, which showed how much pain he must have been in. This man had a heart attack and died, my guide told me. Once the man came out of the tunnel, a woman sitting at a table nearby got up to meet him. With both hands, she led him gently to the table where they sat down together. Even though they were connected, I couldn't hear what they were saying because I was too far away. I could only see her holding his hand while they talked. He told her she was reminding him of his roots and telling him, "Your lifetime is over." As with all orientation counselors, her job was to help people remember where they came from and find their way back to their true selves. She must have said, "Now that you're back where you belong, I'll show you the ropes." Everything about this was strange and deep at the same time. I still wasn't sure that I had really died. My thoughts were all over the place, but Alan's words helped me stay grounded. I watched everything happen as he told me about it, but I still didn't understand that I was going to die. This was something completely new. The old man who had just come out of the cave then did something amazing. He started to change. He went from being an old man to a man in his 20s or 30s right in front of my eyes. Alan said that on the other side, everyone looks young and healthy. He didn't say why that was, though. I thought that maybe it was God's plan or something to do with the fact that Jesus died young. I'm not sure. Alan did say that every soul has a younger side, a period of their life when they were at their best. He said that we only age when we start living a lifetime. This is a normal and important part of going through the different stages of life. But in the future, where we live forever, we stay young. That's how we really look. Of all the parts of my orientation, this one is still the most vivid in my thoughts. The man who had turned back into his younger self seemed to remember everything after the psychologist was done talking. He knew he was from our true home, the place where we all come from, and will go back to. I saw that Earth isn't really our home. We're just going through. We're here to learn and gain awareness. Even though it sounds strange, that understanding became a part of me like a truth I couldn't deny. The man got up and, full of new energy, turned to his right. He took 3 steps down into what I could only call the most beautiful garden I had ever seen. It was green, clean, and bright, just like a perfect English garden. Still, the grass, trees, flowers, and everything else here were different from anywhere else on Earth. The plants and colors had a surreal brightness to them. A huge crowd was waiting for him when he got off the stairs. A lot of people had come together to greet him, and they were standing to his right. It seemed like they had been waiting for this moment. Later, Alan told me that after orientation, souls go to a place called the Union to see their parents, friends, family, and other people they knew before they came to Earth. The Union was a happy, celebratory, and somber place. I learned that life on Earth is very hard, and that coming back to the other side is a huge deal. When bad things happen, we all grow, but that growth costs something. It's hard for many people to come here because of how hard life can be on Earth. That there are worlds out there that many souls like because they aren't as hard surprised me. But Earth? The Earth is a unique spot, or proving ground. Everyone you knew will be happy when you come back. They cheer for you and tell you how proud they are that you did something you thought you would never be able to do in your whole life. That's how important this trip is. I did find it strange, though, how the orientation guides knew exactly who each person was as they came out of the tunnels. There were no computers, papers, or files to keep track of the souls that were going through. Still, they knew. They knew all along. The tube has no way of knowing when someone dies. I still don't know the answer to that puzzle. The counselors, the people waiting on the other side, and the tunnel all seem to know when someone is coming. I'm still confused about it. The first part of my near-death experience was going through that tube, seeing the light, going into the orientation center, and finally seeing my family and friends again. These are the places my guide showed me, but there were more. He also took me to a beautiful rectangle building with huge rooms all over. The size of the place was huge compared to anything I had seen or thought of. These weren't just big buildings. They were massive and out of this world huge. What I saw was so big that nothing else on Earth can compare. In my search for things online a few years ago, I found the Temple of Artemis in Turkey. It also made me think of the orientation center I had been in during my trip, which was strange. If your readers are interested, they can look up the Temple of Artemis to see a picture of a place that looks a lot like the one I went to in the afterlife. After that, my guide led me into a huge building with columns that stretched out in a huge square shape. It was all too big for me to handle, but when I walked inside, the area changed into something more personal, but still very grand. I walked into a round room that felt oddly familiar. It was like being in a movie theater, but not quite. There were at least 15 or 20 movie screens arranged in a wide circle around the top of the room. My guide told me that this is where the review of my life would happen. A look back at my life, something I had never thought about before. Still, there I was, about to repeat my whole life up to that point. My guide told me that there is always a review at the end of a lifetime to make sure everything went as planned. No one can get out of it. It's an important part of the process. I saw myself from birth to age 21 as the screens came to life and played different parts of my journey. There were 3 screenings that showed me as a newborn, a child, and a kindergartner, all at the same time. Even though it was moving quickly, it felt planned, like each moment was important for seeing how my life fit into the bigger picture. A very important thing I learned is that everyone goes through this review of their life. It's not just to judge what you've done. It's also to think about how you've grown and how you've dealt with the difficulties that were part of your life plan. My guide stressed that the purpose of this review is to see how you've grown and met your goals. It's a moment of truth when you can think about the journey of your life. Not only seeing the events of my life play out was what struck me most during the life review, I also felt them. You don't just watch, you remember every conversation, every happy moment, and every time you've bonded with someone. You feel the love and happiness that comes from those ties, but you also feel the pain of any harm you may have done to others, even if you didn't mean to. The life review puts you in the shoes of the people you've met. You can feel everything they did, good and bad. Every time you do something nice for someone, you feel warm all over again. But every time you do something bad, no matter how small, you feel their pain as if it were your own. There is a deep lesson in understanding here. You learn from this kind of event, not just from remembering it. At that moment, I realized that this review of my life wasn't just a way to look back. It was also a way to learn and grow in my understanding of how our actions affect other people.